Hello, welcome. I'm another Magento dev. I'm going to run through with you some basic module development, show you some useful stuff, some useful tools to pop in your back pocket for when you're sort of developing modules. See you in a bit. Right, okay. So before we actually get started, I just got to say, if you are creating a lot of Magento modules, if you're finding a project you do it, I'll tell you what, even if you are, get hold of this extension for VS Code. If you use VS Code, it's absolutely brilliant. So what it does, it's called the Magento Wizard. So it's this one here by Vitaly Peretiatko. Hopefully I've said that right. And I'll be using it in this tutorial, and it'll become apparent what it does, but it speeds up Magento 2 module development massively. You can forget all your online boilerplate generators, module generators. This is the absolute dogs. It's brilliant. So right, I thought I'd just give that a quick shout because I'm going to be using it. So all modules, if we're covering the basics, all modules live in a code folder, and as you can see on this test site that I've got here, which is this site, which I'm going to be sort of demonstrating on, doesn't have a code folder up to now. That's because I've not added anything yet. So let's start by adding a code folder. Okay, so all Magento modules, themes are in themes. I've done a quick video on this before on getting this going with Gulp, but themes live within front end, design front end. Modules live within code. So this is where the module comes in. The extension, sorry, comes in really handy. So let's just, and once you got it installed, you press Command Shift and P, and then as you can see there, look at that. Magento Wizard, create a new extension, recently used. Create a new one. You'd need a vendor name, so I'll tell you what, we'll use my name, Adam, and then the extension name within that, we're going to call it footer block. Okay, so look what it's done. It's blasted all the default files in. So let's cover these. Every Magento 2 module requires a module XML. There's 3 files that every Magento 2 module requires now, and module XML is one of them, and that lives in the etc folder. Composer.json is another sort of default. It's recently been advised that that's the one that you need, that one in there as well. And registration PHP, obviously to tell the system that this module exists. So at this point, once you've got it installed, the Magento system will detect it. There it is. It's been detected. So we can also install it and get it working, get it in there. To do that, it's pretty straightforward. You just run setup upgrade, clears the static folder as well. That setup upgrade installs all default modules, all recently added modules by default, because this, if your module's got any schema, or particularly if it's a paid module that you're installing through the code folder, you'd want to be running setup upgrade rather than just module enable. And as I say, any new modules, it picks them up and it installs them by default. And to show you, it's no longer in the list of disabled modules, and it is now in the list of enabled modules. So this means that we can sort of get started with our development without having to worry about doing that later. But the base module is enough for us to be able to run setup upgrade and get it in the system. So as you can see, it's setup upgrade has some side effects when it comes to front end development. So setup upgrade enables all caches that have been disabled. So we need to make sure that those are disabled, and I'd always recommend when doing any sort of local development that layout, block and full page are disabled, just so you don't have to faff about re-enabling faff about clearing the cache on command line. And also at this point I could actually run static content even though I'm in developer mode. On developer mode I could go to the front end of the site now and I could refresh it, and because it's in developer mode it'll take a little bit of time, but it'll rebuild all the static assets. Right, so without any further ado, right, we're going to add a block. We're going to add a block to the footer of the website. Now, to be able to add a block, you want to add a block to the module, so you want to add a new folder. You want to call this block. So this is basically going to be the part of the module that queries the Magento system. It's not the part that you would that renders on the front end. That's done within a view folder, which we'll add in a minute. So in the block folder, file, and we're going to call it footer.php. And watch this. So this is the extension in play, the little wizard in play as well on my VS Code. Boom! Look at that. Adds all your namespace in. It adds some nice boilerplate code that we can now sort of mess around with and get going, and sort of make our own. So it's actually constructing some DI here, which is pretty cool. But we're just going to get rid of that for now. So full disclosure, this is one I've made earlier, so just to sort of speed things up a little bit, I'm going to copy and paste from another module that does a similar thing that I have in another install that's not on screen, but it'll just speed things up a little bit, but you'll still get the idea on how all this is sort of constructed and laid out. And obviously you can pause the video on these screens, a little package on GitHub for you to be able to download all the files for this tutorial if you like. Say if you like, I'm talking to nobody, no doubt. So the first thing is a public function, and this public function is going to request the CMS block and inject it into my module for us to be able to call and use. Right, so CMS block is going to be an array, and then okay, so first of all we'll show this on a home page, on the home page, and the way you would do that, Magento 2, is we just wrap it in an if statement, the action name, and the action name is CMS index for the home page. The root is home there. So we'll come to this. We'll come back to this in a sec. And finally, the last thing we're going to need to do is within this function, we then need to return the static block. Things you need to the key things you need to know about this file is the class is always going to be what the file is called within the block folder. So it's called footer.php, so your class has got to be footer. The namespace then is sort of up to the containing folder. So the namespace, as you can see, is the vendor name, which is Adam, the module name, which is footer block, and then the block file folder, which is within footer block. So this basically gives us some output that we can pick up and display on the front end. And the way you would and the way you display things on a front end, in the front end from a module is you need to create a view. From the model view controller, you need to create the view. So let's add a view, and in there it follows the same sort of path as when you're theming, for example. But we're saying view front end, and then inside front end we're saying that we need a layout file, and it's layout, and we're also going to be using in this front end as well templates. So it's layout and it's templates with an S. So let's start with the simple one. The simple one is the template. So this is the PHTML file. Call it something. You can call it whatever you want. Actually, I'll just call it footer. PHTML. The template file, which will actually give you your output on the front end. And now I've created it. Look, it's handy again. It immediately tries to get a function from the block. I mean, I haven't got a get name function in the block, but you know, gives you an idea. And actually, it's that. Ooh. What I need to display on the to display what the output of the block, you know, the output, the returned function will give me. So this block will be retained on the front end if I call get CMS block more. I mean, I can make that a little bit more succinct, so I'll call it get CMS block for the purposes of this. Oops. Get CMS block on the front end, which is fairly straightforward, I think, and all that's going to do is it's going to output the CMS, and it's currently in a H1 tag. As I say, the boilerplate code from the extension is pretty cool. Gives you a lot of shortcuts that you can just sort of overwrite, but I'll just export that in a span tag so it doesn't look weird, because it'll be a load of HTML that's possibly that comes out the other end. And then now this is probably I mean, all files are equally important, but this is a key file in the display of any global block, or any block really, in Magento 2, and it's the layout block. And the layout blocks are normally comprised, well, are always, sorry, not normally, always comprised of XML. And we want this to be a default, to affect the default templates, i.e. the home page. Basically every page, it's going to be global on the site. Like, we're going to show it above the footer. And I was just showing you, like, in the footer PHP, that we can sort of parameterize it to just display on the home page just for now, just to sort of demonstrate it. But we want it to be part of the default XML. And this is, again, it's already created some nice boilerplate code for me, which is really good. But if I show you an example from my theme that I've created, there's not a default file in here, but there's a default header block. And if I was to create a default, say for example I wanted to add some custom CSS to this block that I wanted to save in the module, I would also add up here a default head blocks XML, and I would add my own my own CSS file, which would link to a web directory in the module. I'm not going to do that, but that's something that you can do. But to check this out, the best way to do it is to actually check out what Magento does, and I would always advise checking what Magento does. So to do that, you're going to vendor Magento, and then I know for a fact that the default control, or the default XML of any Magento site, is in module theme view front end and layout. So it's there. So you see default header blocks is also in there, which gives us the default scripts that Magento uses, and you can see them on the page, on the output of the page as well. But there's the default XML, and in the default XML on Magento 2 there is heaps of stuff. Like it controls the majority of the global functionality of your template, right from, as you can see there's the welcome message, There's the config of the require JS config. You've got your cookies, your notices, anything that's global, the header in general, and then the welcome in there, and then anything in main content. So we've got the skip to target link, the content area, the header container. If it's a global function, you'll find it in navigation. Sections you'll find it in here, the account, and basically we want to add something to the footer, and lo and behold, there's the footer. Or we might want to add something sort of above the footer, so before the body ends, before you get to that's below the footer. That's the absolute footer. So that's the like where the copyright information is, like way down here. So say we want to add something to above the footer, so above this grey bar here. The best way to sort of go about that, or the best place to probably add it is the page bottom container, and we can give that a go now. So we'll give that a go. So essentially, by default, my code has been generated as being sort of appended to the content, which would be decent enough. I mean, it'd be somewhere in this area here, and if I used a after hyphen class, I could get it to sit below columns here. I could get it to sort of sit, but that's within a narrow template. I want it to stretch all the way along, just like all the way along, and not sit within a column. So I'm going to put it in between the content and the footer. So to be able to do that, we can get our reference from here. So the reference container we're going to use is a page bottom container. I'm going to pop that there because we're just referencing the container. We're not overriding it, so we just reference it. If we was to override it, we would be replacing. If it was just to write a new container and call it this, we'll be replacing that container. We don't want to. We just want to reference it, and we want to insert our own block. So, as I say, a bit of boilerplate code here, but we know ours is called footer. This name just needs to be something something unique. I normally go for sort of something more. I normally use lowercase and dot and full stops, and that's because sort of Magento uses that as well, just to sort of keep everything in a convention. And then what it's doing here with this template is it's saying, look, which template do you want to show? And we know that we want to show footer PHTML, so we'll change this one from index, which was the auto generated code, to footer PHTML. Now that's enough to get something going, and it should actually output this block template in this area. So for now, we'll just test it. And the best way to test it would be to we'll just comment out this, and we'll just write some output. So we'll relax the problem. We'll see if we can get the word testing. There we go, to display just where we wanted it to display. And if we just double check the actual div tag, beautiful, spanning fully across, and we've sort of got the word testing there as we expected. Didn't have to flush the cache or anything because we've got the key one switched off, which is the layout cache, hence the layout file being sort of picked up straight away by Magento, and we've got the result. So that, friends, is a really basic module, a really useful technique for getting content onto a page. The reason I haven't done it in the theme, because that could have been achieved in the theme quite easily. The reason I haven't done it in the theme is because I can now use this module on any project, and it will plug and play. In this format. Whether you're showing static content or something from a more user editable content, this technique of getting global blocks, in fact, onto your Magento is very, very useful. Now, because we haven't got that if statement, it'll be everywhere. It'll be right through the site. So this would have. So we'll just let's do one more little mod just to demonstrate. But I think you all know what's going to happen. So this now should only appear on the home page. Which again, as I say, so it's gone off there. It's pretty useful. It's your specification. So yeah, so that's an intro. That's an intro. That's sort of number one, part number one. I think I'll probably do 3 sort of videos, and the next one will look at creating a static block in the Magento admin, how to get that linking through to your Magento, and then we'll look at adding a bit more functionality in part 3. So yeah, stay tuned. Cheers.